played it very, very, very well indeed.
No more slices for you.
Oh, look at that for judgment.
You'll learn.
I'm not sure when we're supposed to do milestones, but we've made it to episode 2 of Sliced, a new golf podcast every Monday with me, Ben Coley, and my friend Sam Harrop. Everything we can cover in under an hour. That's the one promise we're going to make, so I'm not going to waste too much of that hour for episode 2. Thanking you for listening to episode 1, but if you have listened, please subscribe. Please hit the ratings button. 5 stars would be great. We'd take 4. If you're going to give us 3, just don't do anything. And if you can review and comment, all that sort of stuff, it gets us to more people. It means we're more likely to carry on doing this. And yeah, we'll be able to crack on well beyond the Ryder Cup, which is going to be on the list of things we discussed this week. Sam,
it is. It's coming up soon, and I'm eager to hear your selections for that. But before we get to that, we have to do a little review of what's happened the week just past, of course. And before we get into the Team Cup, let's start with the Sony Open, which you may be able to tell if you're watching on YouTube from the bags under my eyes. I did stay up and watched to the bitter end last night, and I'm glad I did. It was a cracking finish.
It was, wasn't it? I didn't stay up. I loaded the PGA Tour app at 6:30 this morning, expecting to see Stephen Jaeger or JJ Spawn has won the Sony Open. I was surprised to see it was Nick Taylor. Even more surprised to see the circumstances. Although by now maybe we shouldn't be surprised, right? Nick Taylor just does crazy things on the last hole and wins golf tournaments, which is a handy knack to have. And he's one of those, like a lot of people, if you didn't bet on him last week, you'd probably be regretting it. That was kind of my first reaction. 100 to 1 about a 4-time PGA Tour winner with stacks of course form. I actually put him up for the event last year. A tinge of frustration, but we're not dwelling on that. I can't say he was on the list because he's not been playing very well. But I suppose he sort of validated those who felt that regardless of his form, he should have been on that President's Cup side, and I'm sure he'll want to be on it next time.
Yeah, possibly, and actually, I think he may have even said in an interview that he's potentially been sort of trying too hard to make the team, and that maybe sort of threw his game off somewhat. Whereas now, I guess he doesn't have that same kind of pressure, internal pressure, so that he can kind of play a bit more freely. And yeah, I mean, it was a strange one, honestly, the back nine, because you had Jaeger and Spawn, who by all accounts one of them should have won it, but back nine. Jaeger spraying it all over the place with his driver, well, mainly left. At one point, he was looking in someone's swimming pool to see if he could find his ball. Which
he got a free drop if he did, I'm sure. But
yeah, and then Spawn was, maybe not quite as erratic, but he just couldn't make a birdie for love nor money on the back nine. And then he made a very costly bogey on the 17th hole to drop him one back. And then, of course, at the same time, Echeverria made a birdie, and the eventual winner, Nick Taylor, made that crazy chip and eagle. And yeah, the playoff was great. Echeverria probably should have taken it to a third hole. Missed a really short-ish putt, or at least he left his previous putt too far away. And Nick Taylor, yeah, just a brilliant, just really clutch stuff, I suppose. So yeah, it was a good win for him, and that's 5 PGA Tour wins now. And I wanted to sort of allude to the sort of comment that he made, because I read his interview transcript afterwards, and he was asked about sort of consistency and whether he'd like to be a more consistent golfer. And he sort of said, yeah, actually, I'd love to be more like Corey Connors and be more consistent. And actually, I don't know if I agree with him, because I mean, Corey Connors has had 2 PGA Tour wins. Admittedly, he's not been on tour quite as long as Nick Taylor. But actually, it's a lot better, I think, if you can have those sort of peak weeks, where you're winning tournaments, and then if you drop off for a few months, it doesn't really matter if you're getting those wins semi-regularly.
Yeah, I suppose it depends what you're after, doesn't it? And it's there's a lot of nuance, but they are quite a stark contrast, those two, right? They've sort of flipped, because as amateurs, Nick Taylor was world number 1. But Corey Connors was way down the rankings when he made the US Amateur Final, way down, and has obviously turned into one of the sort of most reliable players in the world. but 2 wins versus 5 wins. I suppose on the flip side, and this is something we've probably come across with players like Tommy Fleetwood, who happily has got onto a number of wins where it's no longer, although he doesn't have the PGA Tour win, he's got enough wins for it to not really be levelled at him. But would you rather the 5 wins, or would you rather the 2 wins and having contended for majors, been in the mix at Augusta, been in the mix at Oak Hill, played the President's Cup? I'd probably choose Connors, I'll be honest. And I think it's probably a good example of where wins have a very dramatic effect on how we view a golfer. And if Nick Taylor hadn't chipped in last night, and if he hadn't holed a 70-foot putt or whatever it was to win the Canadian Open, his whole career looks different. And that's ifs, buts, and maybes. But I think in a very broad way, I would say we're too dramatic at both ends in the way we talk about people who are winners and not winners, as it were. The guys who've won loads like him, they get so much credit for that. And look, there's nothing wrong with that really. But when you chip in and when you hold those long putts, any golfer will tell you there's a bit of luck involved there. And he's just been on the right side of it. And look, you have to put yourself in the position to do it. And he's got a great habit of sticking around and putting himself in that position. And he certainly doesn't falter under the gun, which is a great quality. But the gap between him and someone who hasn't won or has won once, or a Corey Connors, it's very, very small, but it can look really, really big. The only other thing for me on the Sony, and I'm happy to keep going on it if there's more to say on it, but short games win the Sony, don't they? And I need to remind myself of that next year. Like they just do. I mean, Echevarria might just be the best putter on the PGA Tour at the minute, notwithstanding what sounds like a 3-putt, which I was not aware of before I prepared this comment. Yeah, he's right up there, and obviously Nick Taylor's brilliant around the green. So Sony often goes that way, and you contrast that with Jaeger and Spawn, who are just guys who can, all of a sudden, when you're in that position, we've all seen it happen a lot, you're in that position where you're sort of playing well, you're at the top of the leaderboard, and all of a sudden you've got 5 or 6 holes left, and it's not enough to be hit in the middle of the fairway, in the middle of the green, and you need something to happen, and players like that who rely on their long game so much sometimes can struggle to just get that jolt that Nick Taylor has found. So
Yeah, absolutely, and I should actually clarify. So Echevarria, it was off the green, so I suppose it wouldn't class as a 3-putt, but he did putt it, and it was probably about 40 feet, let's say. So yeah, by all accounts, he should have got it down in 2. But yeah, I mean, the thing that's worth noting as well is that Nick Taylor did miss a couple of very short putts on the 15th and 16th hole. I think one was just over 4 feet, and the other one was just under 4 feet. So, I mean,
wow.
By all accounts, he probably should have won the tournament outright. But who knows? Had he made those, maybe he wouldn't have made the eagle on the 18th hole. Yeah, that's just one of those things that you never really know. But yeah, for as good as his putting was in the playoff, and other parts of the tournament, he did miss a couple of very short ones down the stretch.
Some career he's putting together anyway. Like I say, I mean, I was on him every week in his web.com tour season as it was. Like I said, as a world number 1 amateur, and he's come through and he's taken down some massive names: Mickelson, Scheffler, obviously Echevarria not on that level, but it's a handy knack. He's won 3 of his wins really early in the season as well, and like I say, one that got away a little bit, but for me it wasn't. It's not one that I'm going to lose sleep over, I don't think. But it was a fun tournament, and I like the Sony. It throws up quite a lot of those, doesn't it? Like for whether it's random or whether there's something inherent about the fact that you end with like an easy par 5. I don't know what it is. But on the par 5, by the way, I don't know if you saw, but a couple of players were going through the trees down the 10th fairway. So that'll be internal out of bounds next year, won't it? They've ruined it for everybody. Yeah, Hoffman and Tom Hojgaard. I saw, because Hojgaard was one of my selections, and I saw he played the course the wrong way around yesterday, and he was sort of started quite well, and I thought, oh God, I saw his drive off 18, sort of 350 yards to unknown. It's not unknown, mate. Straight down the 10th fairway, exactly where he was aiming. So well done to those two, but I could almost guarantee that will not be allowed next year. Yeah,
I wouldn't bet against that. Right, we should probably move on to the Team Cup before we get too bogged down in the Sony, as much as I enjoyed it down the stretch. So Team Cup, I believe you watched a little bit more of this than I did because I was at my son's football match. But talk me through at least the whitewash really that it was in the end.
Yeah, it was pretty one-sided, wasn't it? I watched a heck of a lot of the Team Cup. I love team golf, and I have to say, like, sometimes I can be a bit hard on broadcasters and stuff, and I do think sometimes in golf we deserve a little bit better, particularly from the American side of things. But Sky Sports covered it 3 days, and you didn't miss a thing. If you wanted to watch it, you did not miss a thing. So it was great, and there's a slight emptiness to it when they're holding putts of consequence in theory, and there's not a lot of people there. It's just the nature, unfortunately, of it being where it is. If they held this tournament in the middle of summer in the UK, there would have been packed galleries. But it's everything's compromised, isn't it? And that's where the money to stage the event is, and it obviously fits in with the calendar, and it works. It is what it is, and I think everybody who's there, all the players, they know. Justin Rose gave it the big one over a putty hole, but there was a tongue-in-cheek element to that. But it was interesting. Matteo Manacero said afterwards it was really great to be in those team rooms, and they tried to make it like a mini Ryder Cup. And they had a speech from Jose Maria Olazabal on the Saturday night, the Europeans, which the gist of it was, look, we're going to lose, but we're going to fight. And they did. Like the tail of that European, it could have been a lot worse in the end, and the tail of the European team did fight. But the GBNI team were better on paper. They were in front early on. It's kind of it played out as you'd have kind of expected it to, really. And Tommy Fleetwood leading from the front. He got his 4 points from his 4 matches. He played fabulously. I mean, he missed a 3-foot putt yesterday to go 8 under through 8 holes around Abu Dhabi. That's just insane. And by the way, just the last thing on it, because I did talk too much last week. The last thing on it, like sometimes on a match play scorecard, you see 8 under through 8, and that it's not all as it seems. That was 8 under through 8, playing every shot. So it was phenomenal.
Wow, yeah, that's impressive stuff. And I think Pavon was doing pretty well himself, I believe. But he just couldn't keep up.
I was really impressed with him because I wasn't sure what to expect. He had a quiet start to the season, a quiet end to last season, and obviously quite rightly, the Sky Sports team were pretty high on him in terms of making the Ryder Cup side and things like that. But I have to say, alarm bells were ringing late last year when he said he'd changed coach. At the end of the best 12 months of his career by far, and I had my doubts as to what will happen with him. He felt a lot like a player who'd hit his peak, and that would be about that. And that may still be the case, but he played really well all week. And to keep with Tommy, which he pretty much did. A lot of players would have lost that match 7-6. So yeah, it was a good effort from him. Probably the standout player on the international side. The European side. Also, it looks like Rasmus Hojgaard had a bit bad week. I think if you dig closer, he didn't actually have a bad week. And the only other takeaway from the sort of a team perspective for me is just maybe on reflection, Rasmus Nergaard Peterson, it was probably asking a lot. It was maybe a bit too soon to rush him into that environment, and I hope it doesn't have a detrimental effect on him for the rest of the year. But he struggled, and you sort of think about it, well, the GBNI team didn't have John Parry, who had basically the same 2024, except that he also won on the DP World Tour. And there were probably a few Europeans. I'm thinking Frederic Lacroix, Guido Migliozzi, Nacho Elvira, Angel Hidalgo, who might have felt that they should have probably been ahead of him in the queue for now. So he's got a bit of learning to do, but clearly a very exciting talent still.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he progresses when it. Maybe slightly rushed through, and who knows whether it will have any effect. I mean, it could possibly have a net positive effect that he's had that experience of playing in a team environment, even if it wasn't a particularly successful one. But yeah, well, I think he's going to have a good year on the DP World Tour. I mean, he was one that was kind of in my thoughts when we did our player tracker. He's probably one of 4 or 5 that I was contemplating, but yeah, keen to see how he gets on. And this actually leads quite nicely on to the next topic. So someone asked whether we could basically lay out what we think will be the 2025 European Ryder Cup team. So we're going to discuss our selections here, and I believe that we agreed that there's 8 locks that we're pretty sure, we're almost certain are going to remain in the team, which is going to be McIlroy, Rahm, Hatton, Fleetwood, Hovland, Oberg, Lowry, and Fitzpatrick. We don't think anything's going to go wrong there, correct?
Yeah, correct. And there's been a bit of talk that Fitzpatrick's gone off the boil, and he's not been at his absolute best lately. But it's about 3 months since he won the Sorry, it's not 3 months since he won the Dunhill Links. That was Tyrrell Hatton. But look, he's clearly going to be in that side. He'd be one I wouldn't be worried about whatsoever.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I, without sort of leading too quickly onto my selections, the one that I would possibly add as a lock. I know you're not quite as convinced because we've talked about this previously, but Bob McIntyre, I think will make the team. Had obviously a very good Ryder Cup debut, and he's still been playing well. Maybe not quite to the heights of what he sort of achieved around sort of summer last year, but I do. I definitely think he'll be on the team.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's my number 9 in the list. I all but make him a lock. There's just like the tiniest bit of doubt, but he'd be a very short price. And I suppose it's worth pointing out that it's 6 picks and 6 wildcards, and the system has changed, so it's been simplified. If simplified, it doesn't make it simple, but it's been simplified. We've got 1 points list, which is a good thing for those of us who are going to be trying to work out permutations. I suppose the interesting wrinkle from this is that the points on the PGA Tour, which kick in January, are worth more. So by way of example, this week the Amex, it's a good field as it happens, like with Schauffele, Cantlay, and several other high class players. But the Amex, just as the Sony was last week, will be worth the same as the Dubai Desert Classic. So I think last week I did say that Jesper Svensson hadn't done himself any favours in terms of Ryder Cup prospects. Strictly speaking, that's not true on a points basis. I just think it gives him to learn, learn the ropes on the PGA Tour, although he played very well. Might be detrimental. But points wise, it basically the PGA Tour is going to give you more. And with there only being 6 qualifiers, I mean the 6 qualifiers are going to be of those among those 9 names, almost certainly. So 6 picks. It depends which way they go, and I mean you can tell me yours, but I just wonder how much of a factor it being away from home at Bethpage will be, and how willing they'll be to take risks with young players and what have you.
I think that's a very good shout. I mean I don't know how much they'll kind of lean on players who've got sort of that US experience, beyond the 6 that are automatic picks, and I don't know the answer to that honestly. But that's one of the reasons I think McIntyre is as good as a lock. But yeah, I mean I'll go into mine. The 3 that I've got, and actually I'm doubting them after you said that, to be fair. But Nicholas Hojgaard, I mentioned about 6-9 months ago, and I said I can see him being on a Ryder Cup team. I think that his ceiling is very high. I know he's got slight short game deficiencies, you could say.
You mean he can't chip, Sam, is what you mean there, don't you? That's a diplomatic way of saying the man cannot chip. That's fine. You don't see a lot of chip shots in a Ryder Cup usually, so that's okay.
Well, yeah, and you know what? He hits the ball a long way. Bethpage is a big course, right? I think that's going to help. Obviously, he played pretty well this week. Picked up 2 points for the Continental Europe team. And I think... as long as he has, a good season, he should be definitely a consideration given his length off the tee. Then I've put Pavon, as we just talked. I actually listened to Paul McGinley's interview. That's something I did catch yesterday, where he was saying something they're really looking for is someone with grit. And he actually mentioned Pavon, as someone who's sort of shown that over the course of the Team Cup. Sort of grit and personality and charisma. So I think he'd be a good addition. Obviously, he'll need to play almost as well as he did last year. Won't necessarily need to win, but he will need to obviously have a high consistency. The last one, which really I was between probably about, honestly, half a dozen names at least. I ended up landing on Aaron Rai just because he's very solid. But just thinking again about Bethpage, he doesn't hit the ball at a particularly long way, but he is very straight. He's very measured. He had a decent Team Cup, plays a lot in America, which I think is a big factor. And I didn't actually realise until I checked it this morning, he's 21 in the world rankings. He's a good player. Yeah,
too right. And look, we going back a couple of years, I remember that I wasn't convinced that Sepp Straka should have been on the last team. He was the one where I'd have said, okay, you want to find a place for Moronk. Stracker would be the one. Now I say that, I can't remember. He was a wild card, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember how much we kept hearing that line. Look, he's won on the PGA Tour. He has won on the PGA Tour. And for two of your guys, Pavon and Rai, that could be something that is considered hugely in their favour. Now, obviously, Stracker had done it pretty recently. He'd done it in July, hadn't he, at the John Deere Classic. It's going to be 18 months since Pavon did it, a year since Rai did it, so maybe going close at least to doing it again will be important. I mean, the disrespect you've shown for the Hojgaard twins there is remarkable. I'm staggered, but that's where I've gone. I mean, there, as you've said, there are so many Europeans. Like anyone who can say with confidence they know the 12. There are so many. If it does come down to it, we touched upon this last week, in the Hero Cup as it was a couple of years ago, Hojgaard and Bob were very, very good. And I do think it probably was a little tick in the box for Nicolai in what was a very, very difficult decision versus Meronk. So the fact that Pavon played as he did, it's not going to get him in the team. But if it's Pavon or Rai, or if it's Pavon or Rai's a bad example because he played well as well. But if it's Pavon or whoever, that could be in his favour, definitely, as could the PGA Tour win. So, all three of those you mentioned. I mean, Norgaard's the biggest prize, obviously, but the fact that he hits the ball 350 yards is a big plus. And he was one of the better players for Europe last week as well. So I've gone with both Hojgaard twins.
Okay.
I think Rasmus is in pole position now. They don't seem to be able to play well at the same time as each other, do they? They sort of, maybe there is only one of them. I don't know. There's some sort of imposter. But Rasmus is the one on the up at the minute. But Nicolai was starting to hit the ball as we know he can towards the end of last year. So that I think.
You put off by his debut in Rome or not?
Look, it's not going to help him that he didn't that he did struggle a little bit. But I would say you could probably flip it. Or at least say that, well, look, he had that experience. He was on a winning team. He's been there. He knows what it's all about now. I don't find it difficult to overlook. And probably you look at that team as well, just thinking about it, like Francesco Molinari will know that better than anybody because he didn't have the best of debuts in the Ryder Cup. He didn't have the best of experiences at Medina, and then all of a sudden he's part of the winning team, getting that point against Tiger Woods, where he was lucky to get it. And then obviously 6 years later, he's a record breaker. So I definitely wouldn't, hold it against Nicolai. But I've gone with those two. I think Rasmus, the interesting thing with Rasmus for me is he's added distance, definitely. This again leads me to think there's only one of them because statistically now, like he's driving it as Nicolai was, which is a really impressive thing. I think the way he won the Irish Open, the way he then took Rory the distance in Dubai. Now he's going to be on the PGA Tour. He starts out this week in Dubai, but he's going to be going over to the PGA Tour. That's the big unknown with quite a few of these Europeans. My final one is Aaron Rai. I think that win could really be in his favour. I think he's also a potential point of difference because while you're right about Bethpage really is a long hitter's course, I don't think it ever hurts you to have, just someone who can put it in the fairway. We don't know how they'll set it up, but someone who can put it in the fairway. He's a fantastic mid to long iron player. He's so sure of his processes and the path he's on, isn't he?
He's very level-headed and sort of measured.
I think he could be a real sneaky one actually, and he did play very well last week. But I mean, I'm just going to run through some of the names. I'm not going to comment on them, but there's some of the, just to give you an idea of the depth here. You've got Matt Wallace, who was third at Bethpage in the USPGA. Clearly, everything he thinks about when he wakes up is Ryder Cup. You've got Torbjorn Olesen. You've got Alex Noren, who, he's not far off being one of the top 10 in Europe at the moment in terms of like the mid-term form. You've got Tom McKibbin, who I know we're going to come to. You've got Paul Waring, all of a sudden. You've got these youngsters like Ayora and Rasmus Nergaard Peterson. You've also got people like Adrian Meronk, who, if he went and won on LIV, could be another interesting option. You've got Thomas Dietrich, who continues to play at a really high level. All of these guys will seem unlikely at the moment, but as the season progresses, and just the final one, and the most complicated, I would say, is Sergio. Now, I don't think he's playing, I'll be honest, because I don't think he's done enough to win back some of the friends he lost.
I feel like we need almost a separate podcast for that particular discussion. I mean, we could easily talk about that for 20 minutes. But I'd agree with you. I don't think that he'll make it on, despite all the obviously the pros. there may just be too many cons.
Yeah,
May
I think
just be
so.
too
I think so.
controversial. So yeah,
He's certainly
But-
playing well enough, though, isn't he? You know, to like
Oh,
his
yeah.
form on Live is good enough to. He's like the fourth, fifth best player on Live, and that's a good standard, however we dress it. So
absolutely.
I doubt
And
it,
you know
but
what?
he's there.
And if he rocks up to Augusta and and finishes strongly there, then that that discussion will come to a head again. So yeah, we'll see what happens over the next few months. But we must move on to keep things under an hour, which we have promised. Let's not forget. So we're going to our in the news section, and obviously the main news, which you alluded to a minute ago. Tom McKibbin going to Live. Now this hasn't actually been 100% confirmed, but it is happening, isn't it? It is. By all accounts, it is happening, and what are your thoughts?
Complicated, I suppose. I was just reading before we came on. Bunk could have got some good lines from Padraig Harrington, who is one of those who's definitely not in the sort of judgmental camp. He's just weighing up what it means for his career, and he's clearly a little bit unconvinced that it's the right thing for McKibbin. If anything, he makes it sound like the best thing for McKibbin would be another year on the DP World Tour. Which possibly could be correct, but it's hard to make decisions like that when the two other options are more lucrative. And the PGA Tour certainly is the pinnacle of men's professional golf. I don't know what to think, really. I mean, his age, I think, is a key factor. If he, 22 years old, he could go for 3 years. He comes back, he's younger than Ludwig is now. So it's not like, he's ahead of the game, right? Because he turned pro so young. By all accounts, he's not getting paid like loads and loads, but when you consider his career earnings are under the €2 million mark, I believe at the moment, like he's going to like more than probably quadruple them immediately. And then if you finish last every week on Live, he'll be adding, he could at least multiply them by 10 just with a decent year, one decent year. So the financial side of it is very, very clear to see for a player who has a lot of time on his side. So I do understand that. Above all else, I think the one thing that's almost we've stopped saying is that if he goes, and it's been put to me, Lawrence Donegan said to me, and he's former Guardian golf correspondent, a golf journalist with connections beyond those which I have. He reckons that if McKibbin's going, then this means a deal is close because his manager will know. I would just say we thought that about John Rahm, if I certainly wouldn't be comfortable making a decision based on an expectation through a rumor or whatever, or even through having spoken directly to Guy Kinnings. Like, unless it's signed, it's not definite. Yeah. But just to finish off, my thoughts are these. Right, we've stopped asking the question, are you happy, or how have you come to accept that you're going to be paid by Saudi Arabia? And that, for me, is like, we have to keep asking it. And it doesn't mean, it's not, some people will hear this and they're like, oh, there you go again on your high horse. It's not about that. Everybody makes compromises every week. I am still on X and Twitter, right? And I find the guy who runs it one of the most detestable people in the world and a genuine danger. But at the same time, he's come in and he's bought the website where I've built a community and I've met people like you and so on and so forth. So I feel a conflict there that's really hard to weigh up. The bottom line is Tom McKibbin is going to be signing so that he is paid by the Saudi Arabian royal family. And whether it's because he thinks it's good for his career, whether he thinks it's just a really sensible thing for a 22-year-old to do, which a lot of people will think, is not about casting judgment. He is accepting that that's where his money is going to come from. And I think that is a shame. And it's something he should be asked. I think when you sign that deal, you should have to answer. And unfortunately, it feels like we've stopped asking, because now it's been legitimized, and this is how sports washing works, right? Lee Westwood, Graham McDowell, they faced the question. They answered it badly, but they faced the heat, and now people can come afterwards. Some would say a sort of more cowardly way of doing it, to come afterwards, take the money, brush it aside, say, well, they're doing it, boxing's doing it, F1's doing it. And I don't like that. I think it's in a complicated world, we still should have to answer for the decisions we make, and I hope he is asked to explain why he's willing to take that money. His answer won't be satisfying to people like me. Doesn't have to be, but I hope someone still asks.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing as well about this is, of course, in the last few days, you've had the comments from the relegated Eugenio Cuchara, who's come out and said, nothing changes. It's just money. Which the timing is interesting, really, with McKibbin obviously on the brink of signing. You know, do you think having seen those comments, he might be questioning himself, or is this just someone who's got sour grapes because maybe they didn't play their best and they're sort of got buyer's remorse essentially?
Yeah, that's interesting. They were reported by Hugo Costa of Golf Channel and Tom of Flushing It Golf. Some really great quotes. And it's good that we can have people speak honestly. It's a shame people can't speak honestly when they're actually there. And you know, motive is always to be considered, isn't it? Like on both sides. Ultimately, he's not played well enough over the last 2 years, and the stuff he said about comparing himself to Ludwig Åberg is just a bit laughable, to be honest with you. Like, you're not as good, mate. That's the bottom line. You want to be treated like Ludwig Åberg and go and contend for a major. Get yourself in a few. You know, there are ways to do that. You can qualify. You can play better when you get the chance, and so on and so forth. I think he's been really badly advised if he didn't know this stuff. Like, if he genuinely went to LIV thinking, oh, no, it's fine, we're going to get world ranking points in a couple of weeks. Like, who's advising him? I suspect those who were advising him were just so in love with the figures that they sort of willfully wrote that bit off. But I do hope he finds a path for himself, and he's a very, very talented player, hits the hell out of the ball, and you know, he's got a bright future. It's just hard to feel sympathy for him, and to be fair, he's probably not looking for sympathy. But ultimately, he got paid, he got his chance, he won a tournament, and then what happens next is up to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, we need to move on really. But
we need to get less serious, don't we? I got awfully serious again.
You know, I don't mind a little bit of serious chat, Ben, but you know, we need to keep it a little bit light, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
And talking of light, let's talk about your new adopted team, the Bay Club, the Bay GC, winning 9-2, I believe, against NYGC.
A landslide, yeah. A great start for the lads. I watched all of that. I saw a few clips. clips. Look good. I will say on it, like my view is that clearly the viewing figures, which were touching 1 million, you know, they outperformed several PGA Tour events. The viewing figures are really, really good for the start. I think and it looked great. Like, it did look really good. I think it genuinely looked good and fun and all the things you'd hope. The players were nice and relaxed, and yeah, it looked great. Does the novelty wear off? It would be my concern. Now, I think, you know, Tiger plays this week, and then Rory the one after. Is that right? I think.
Well, actually, I've had a look at the schedule, and they've actually done it very cleverly, because obviously they had neither of them playing in the first week, almost as a kind of test. I want to see test the water a bit. As you say, Tiger's playing this week. Then you got Rory playing next week. Rory playing the following week, or at least his team playing the following week, if he's selected. And then either Tiger or Rory or their teams are playing every single week. Until the end of the season, so because they have some nights where they've got a double header or triple header, so there isn't a week where one of them isn't involved, which is clever, really. So yeah, but it will be interesting to see. I mean, even with one or both of them playing, you know, the novelty may wear off. Who knows? I quite enjoyed it from what I saw highlights wise.
Kisner funny, was he? Was Kiz on form?
Sorry,
was Kiz on form?
Kiz is tomorrow.
Kiz hasn't played yet. Sorry,
there you go. But I'm going to stay up and watch it because midnight UK time. I feel like I want to watch it live, just so I can kind of get that. You know, it's not quite the same as watching it back on catch up, but so I want to watch it live. I want to see how my team LAGC get on. I want to see if Kiz is as funny as we think he might not be. And yeah, so I will be tuning in and giving my comments next week.
You've already established yourself as our resident TGL expert, haven't you? I'm going to try harder to be able to offer something in return. But yeah. I mean,
I think you're basically the expert of everything else. So, you know, I might as well cling to one small shred of something.
Someone's got to be the computers, haven't they? So.
So onto the World of Golf this week. So obviously we've covered TGL. We've got LAGC against Jupiter Links tomorrow night. Then PGA Tour, we've got the Amex in the desert, DP World Tour Dubai Desert Classic, which we will come to shortly in our fantasy preview. The Corn Ferry Tour, which is underway at the moment because they're playing Sunday to Wednesday, I believe. The Bahamas Golf Classic is already underway. And the Mediclinic Invitational you asked to mention, Ben, on the Sunshine Tour.
Yeah, well, we want to make sure we try and cover as much as we can, and there are loads more tours which are starting over the next few weeks, and at least give them a mention and try and pick out something notable. I just thought among the entries are obviously the sort of young South Africans who are destined for bigger and better things, like Premral and Burke, and Jovan Rebula, Ernie Els' nephew, as he's to be known henceforth. He looks like he might win a Sunshine Tour event this year, so keep an eye out for him. But I thought Maximilian Steinlechner going down there, the Austrian, is quite interesting. He'll be a big player on the Challenge Tour this year. They obviously have Challenge Tour events coming up in South Africa. He might just be laying the foundations for a very bright start to the season. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But clearly not the main event this week, but we've got to keep an eye with a number of South African events on the DP World Tour. As a DP World Tour first podcast, we've got to keep an eye on things at least.
Absolutely, it's nice to see those players coming through, isn't it? So that when they do make their way onto the Challenge Tour or the DP World Tour, you have some sort of knowledge of them. So I'm glad you're doing that, and I will try and do better with that myself. I wanted to mention the Amex quickly, and this is just because for people who might like to have a bet on things. I saw a very interesting interview quote this week. I'd like to read through the transcripts. And Adam Schenk, who finished tied sixth at Sony, it came up with this comment after the second round. He says, "I feel like I can win in Palm Springs. That golf course probably suits me a little more than the Sony Open. And for the best chance for me to win at Palm Springs, I wanted to have this week as a little warm-up." So a little warm-up,
that is good digging.
Finish at the Sony Open. So I think he might be an interesting one to look at this week.
And he's exactly the sort of player who pops up in Palm Springs, like it just like a no frills golfer, just unremarkable but clearly very talented, can do everything to a reasonable standard. The Amex is not everyone's cup of tea because you've got three courses. They've done quite a lot of work to the host course that Pete Dye designed. Is it the stadium or the tournament course? I don't know. Stadium. Yeah. They've done quite a lot of work to that, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But look, I think 3 of the last 5 winners have been available at massive prices, including Nick Dunlap last year. So depends how you like to do it. But let's just say this: it won't be a week I'll be going 5 points each way. Xander Schauffele 8-1. I'm sure he could win the event, but it's just it's an event to accept that you could just have 5 or 6 golfers who miss the cut. But at least they still play on Saturday, so it's not the end of the world, is it?
And this was, of course, the event 2 years ago, I believe it was, where John Rahm described as a effing putting contest.
Indeed, he'd already won it before that. Wasn't so annoyed about it before. But yeah, I mean, it isn't. You're not going to putt badly and win it, but you basically want to be setting up a heck of a lot of chances, right? It's always been one for really just strong, solid drivers of the ball, actually, and there's probably no great secret to that, but it's just like the courses are somewhat challenging off the tee, but after that it's really easy. So if you can drive the ball well, and the pins are favourable, all sorts of awful characters playing in the Pro-Am, and the greens are pretty easy to putt. So I do think strong drivers who can putt, it's a good start. But I don't know, I'd be lying if I said I had the event all figured out at whatever time we're talking on a Monday afternoon.
Well, exactly. There's time to research. I just wanted to throw that one name out, and I need to do some more research myself. But yeah, definitely strong drives of the ball definitely helps if you can if you can putt well. But yeah, it's an interesting one. Bahamas Golf Classic, incidentally, on the Corn Ferry Tour, which is ongoing at the moment. I don't know if you had the same reaction, but when I was looking through the leaderboard, I was like, I didn't quite realise the quality of some of the players who have dropped down onto the Corn Ferry Tour. You've got people like Pearson Coody, Robbie Shelton, Cameron Champ, Garrick Higo, Matt Naismith, Joseph Bramlett, Justin Sir. A lot of these are quite good, often quite young players, some of which are PGA Tour winners already. It's quite a strong quality on the Corn Ferry Tour at the moment.
Yeah, planning ahead, aren't they? Some of these players could get in, or at least have a chance of getting into some of these fields on the PGA Tour, but it's going to be really, really hard to get by on the piecemeal schedule. And look, I think broadly, I know there's, there are a couple of ways you can do it. You have to have cutoffs. You have to say this is where we end things. And I think, if anything, the PGA Tour could do with stronger cutoffs, fewer safety nets, and a generally more ruthless approach. You still have to find the balance, because golf is a very cruel game. It's a game where people can suffer severe dips in form, and some sort of safety net needs to be there to catch them. But the Corn Ferry Tour is a pretty good one. They play for a heck of a lot of money, right? So there's a really good schedule around South America and North America. No real excuses here. And yeah, we're going to see some some better known players, and it's also going to make it a proper test for those players coming through who are younger, feeling their way, and maybe it'll take them a year longer to get to the PGA Tour. Maybe it'll just filter through and we'll get the real stars. It's really hard to say at this point, but yes, as you've pointed out, some very good players and some low score. I mean, we see 59 pretty much as a minimum every year on the Corn Ferry Tour. Well, given the improved quality, we might see 57s and 56s sometime soon.
Maybe so. Yeah, I mean, we've already had a 60 this week. So yeah, definitely there'll be some scores in the 50s, no doubt, this year. We're going to move on to our player tracker feature now. Obviously, we've both selected our player who we're tracking this year. Now, yours, unfortunately, Angel Ayora, unless there's a bout of sort of sickness going around Dubai, won't be making it into the field this week.
No, he won't. But it probably makes him more likely to win. Versus, I think we touched upon it last week, versus your pick, Elvis Smylie. Like, Ayora is definitely more likely to win. Obviously, Smiley's already won, but to win again, I would say Ayora, given his schedule, probably shade that match. But it does mean he's got to wait for his opportunities at this level. It's a shame because it'd be a great golf course for someone who drives it like he does. But Elvis, what are your expectations? Tough, it's a good field.
I've got to be honest, I don't have particularly high expectations, only on the basis that, from what I can see anyway, looking through the tournaments he's played, I can't really see any kind of desert form. That this is from what I can see, his sort of first experience of desert golf on a competitive level, so it's something different. It's a strong field, like you say. It's different to the events he has played to date on the DP World Tour. I hope that he will. I hope that he'll make the cut. I suspect I can't see him finishing better than sort of top 20 really. But we have, I believe, and I just remembered this before we started recording, that when we do our fancy picks, which we'll talk about very shortly, we did have a deal, didn't we, that our player needs to go into those picks. So as much as
I've completely stitched you up, haven't I? I've completely stitched you up.
But it's fine. I'm fully backing Elvis to have a good season, and I like to be invested in him, even on the weeks that he might he might struggle, and maybe I'll be proven wrong, and maybe he'll get a top 10 for me. But
I hope so. Yeah. I hope so.
But fancy
we
picks,
have to have him on by the end of the year, by the way, won't we? That seems another. If you've invested all this time and selected him every single appearance for your fancy golf team, the very least he can do is turn up for a podcast interview. So I
would love to get him on. I realised that his mum, that we mentioned last week, a Grand Slam tennis champion, does actually follow me. So maybe I'll send her a DM and say, can you put in a word for me with young Elvis?
Sounds like a plan. Sounds like a good plan.
But yeah, Ben, tell us about your 6 fancy picks this week.
Yeah, well, I've not given it as much thought as I should have, but what I'm going to do to start is read out the code again. That's why I was just
of course,
slightly distracted by my phone. So if you want to join the DP World Tour Fantasy League, we've had quite a few people join already, which is good. You go sign up, dead easy. You can use all sorts of accounts as well if you don't want to open a new one. With the DP World Tour, go to My Games. It could not be easier to enter your selections. Remember to pick a captain. It makes you pick a captain. They score double points. The code to join the private league is S460TR1D. And you get a prize of playing golf with me and you, Sam, in the deepest depths of winter. Nevertheless, a prize worth winning, I'm sure. Maybe we should say, like, if you're like a single figure handicapper, you're not welcome because we don't want to be embarrassed. But no, you are welcome. Please join the game. We'll be playing it. Look, my selections for it are really going to be quite simple this week. And by the way, I do need to preface this and say this is what do they call it? A side hustle. Not much of a hustle. We're not going to make any money, but this is not my job. Sporting Life is my job. They pay me. I can't reveal selections on here. I don't want anyone to listen and think, oh, hold on, was he hinting there? That I'm not doing any of that. I will talk about the players occasionally the ones I think might play well, but as it relates to price, we don't have to worry about odds, right, on this. So
it's a different game. It's different
game
right?
entirely.
Value is out the window.
Exactly. So having said that, I will say this, the number one thing to consider this week, in my opinion, of the Dubai Desert Classic is that it has become, in recent years, right up there, possibly now, arguably, the number one course on the DP World Tour for elite drivers of the golf ball. And you only have to look at last year's leaderboard. Rory McIlroy, Adrian Meronk, Cameron Young. Statistically, the 3 best drivers entering the tournament, they finished first, second, and third. You go back a few years, even when we had a bit of a surprise, when Paul Casey won, he wasn't a surprise, but you had Brandon Stone, Bob McIntyre, Laurie Cantor right behind him. 3 of the best drivers at that time on the DP World Tour. This is going to happen again and again. It is a golf course with 6 birdie holes, and on all of them, you don't always hit driver, like the par 5 midway through the back 9. They hit it so far these days, they need to turn a 3-wood over the corner, but you've got to be so strong off the tee. Those are also the players who hit the ball higher generally, so they're setting up those eagle opportunities. You've got 2 drivable par 4s. Drivers, good drivers of the golf ball, Sam.
That sounds like Rory McIlroy to me.
Yeah, well, he's famously got a good record here. The only caveat you'd say with Rory is he's got this habit of somehow not winning on his return, and it cost me last year. He played the Dubai Invitational this time last year. It's his first event back, and he must have been 1-10 with 2 holes to play, and somehow did not win. And if you think back to all those times in Abu Dhabi where he just somehow didn't win that tournament in Abu Dhabi, like he must have been second 5 or 6 times, and something went wrong each time. I don't know, probably clutching at straws there. But yeah, I think Rory McIlroy should be in your fantasy golf team. There's no price here. There's no cost. I think he should be. My point of difference will be to leave out John Rahm. He's not played a lot of golf, and he's never played here before, so I'd be leaving him out. My number 2, therefore, we got Hovland as well, by the way, but question marks persist over his game. My number 2 is Tyrrell Hatton. Thought he sounded very, very determined last week. He's not often sort of keen to give himself much praise, but he sounded not only determined but really pleased with his game. And it was interesting to hear him talk about how keen he is to qualify for the Ryder Cup. And I know that I guess they all say that, but it wouldn't necessarily be Tyrrell to sort of really reveal his hand in that way. And he's got 5 or 6 opportunities to do it. And if he can win a Dubai Desert Classic, that's going to give him a really good start. He's got a good record here as well. So Tyrrell Hatton. And then to complete my fancy Race to Dubai team, I'm going for the Hojgaard twins. That's both Nikolai and Rasmus. Having just given them my vote to make the Ryder Cup side, where better to kickstart that process than by finishing first and second in Dubai. And the final one, Laurie Cantor. I thought obviously I've just mentioned he was 4th here a few years ago. Thought he played really well last week. He ended with a thumping win over Romain Langasque, who wasn't very good on Sunday. But Laurie played really well. And there was one little nugget that I picked up in commentary that I've trawled the internet to see if this might have been something that's been going on for a while, because I know they know each other well. But he's working with David Howell on his putting. Now, I might be made to look silly, and it turns out he's been working with David Howell on his putting since he was 12 years old, but it was the first time I'd heard it. David Howell, for those not aware, one of the best putters of the last 30 years on the DP World Tour, I would say. They're both members at the same golf club in Surrey. Looks lovely. We won't be taking you there. Fox Hills. Fox Hills, okay. Yeah, there's definitely a code on the gate there, isn't there? But yeah, hopefully if that's the only thing that Laurie can struggle with, and he seemed to putt really well. He signed off on Sunday with a really downhill 30-footer to beat Romain Langasque. So I think he'd play well this week. And yeah, they would be my 6. I've just gone with 6 of the very best drivers in this field.
And I've got to be honest, I only counted 5 there. So I got McIlroy, Hatton, the Hojgaard twins, and Cantor.
Oh, right. Sorry. I didn't say Tommy Fleetwood. Yeah, Tommy Fleetwood as well.
I don't think you mentioned him.
No, I didn't. You're absolutely right. Tommy's got a bit of an iffy record here. Always makes the cut, never contends. On paper, it's great for him. And it's also good for people who hit a draw. So it should be great for Tommy. And he was fabulous last week. Look, again, it's fantasy golf. We don't have to pay a price. Yeah. He'll play well.
Well, we've got quite a lot of crossover in our picks. I mean, I've actually, we talked about the fact that, their odds don't make any difference here. And there's some argument, I think you mentioned it last week, that you could just pick the top 6 in the betting every week and you probably do pretty well. That would be a bit boring, wouldn't it? So,
and you're not allowed because you've got Elvis Smylie at 200 to 1 or whatever he is.
Exactly. But to counter that, I have put the top 4 in the betting in my team. So I've got McIlroy, Hatton, Fleetwood, as we've mentioned, all the reasons you've given, and I have put Rahm in. He obviously hasn't played for a little while, has he? Slight unknown in that respect, but
he is good.
A very good driver of the ball. He's a
good
player. Yeah, he's a good player. I mean, ultimately, I think it's fair to say he's probably the second best player in the field if he's playing his best. Which he may not, but I just looked at his name, and I thought I can't really leave him out. But my 2, obviously Elvis Smylie is in there, as we mentioned, and my remaining one is Paul Waring, and this is because he recently moved, or I think it's quite recently anyway, moved to Dubai. So he's obviously a sort of home game to some degree. He obviously won recently in the desert, finished third here in 2019. I think having got that win, I feel like he's going to have a new level of confidence to his own ability. And he played pretty solidly last week. I think it helps helps the people who've played last week. Your Hattons, your Fleetwoods, your Warings. I think it's definitely not going to harm that they've had a nice little warm up. So yeah, he rounds out my 6.
Yeah, on that, I mean, Victor Perez won in Abu Dhabi 2 years ago after the Team Cup. He'd played pretty well in the Team Cup, and then last year, I think the field for the Dubai Invitational was sort of 40 players or 50 players, and then obviously Rory was one of them, and he went one better the week after. Moronk was in that field. Cam Young had played in Hawaii. I think when you're giving the best players, which with one of obviously the top 2 in the betting notwithstanding, they weren't there last week, but when you're giving the best of the rest a chance to shake off the rust, and moving back to Abu Dhabi, it's much more similar than say Yas Links would have been. Obviously they were at Abu Dhabi for the last Team Cup, but if Abu Dhabi had been the first event of the year, it's definitely an advantage. So I don't think you're far wrong there.
Absolutely. Now we get to the really fun bit, Ben. I know you love this.
I genuinely forgot about this. What's the clock? We've got 10 minutes. Fine.
Yeah, so the highest bidder. So we had our first game last week, which Ben, a resounding victory. He's picked up his 5 points. We've got a new category in from my friends at the In the Footsteps of Giants podcast. Check them out. And a lovely chap there by the name of Martin has given us a selection which I haven't seen. I'm going to look it up now. It's on our DMs. Please, by the way, if you have a category, please don't hesitate to send it to us via DM or email, wherever really. But ideally somewhere where we can ignore it until we open it on the podcast. But yeah, we're going to go in now. And we've got to write down how many we think we're going to get. And the category, Ben, is non-American winners of the US Open since 1990. Non-American winners of the US Open since 1990.
We've got to be quick. We've got 30 seconds to put our bids down.
Okay.
Okay. I think I've gone a bit low. I shouldn't say that. I'm going to put my bid on the screen again on the back of this card for a man who's going to come and clean the gutters at some stage. Would be nice, wouldn't it? Oh, here we go. I'd only gone 8. Sam's gone 10 for those of you who are not watching via YouTube. So
maybe I'll put myself under pressure here.
Now you have to name the 10. If you don't, I have to name 2 for 2 points, 1 for 1 point. Yeah. And away we go. I'm annoyed that I don't get to play now.
You may need to Google a couple of these, but we'll see. Okay, so we got John Rahm. We got Matt Fitzpatrick.
This is way easier.
We got Rory McIlroy.
Yeah.
We've got Michael Campbell. We've got. I shouldn't be struggling already, should I? Oh my God, there's tons. I've gone too high, haven't I? I've gone too high, Ben. Graham McDowell.
You're halfway there, Sam. I think you're cruising. To be honest, I think you're cruising.
Martin Keimer.
Very good. We're on 6.
Who else have we got? 1990. Who would have won in the? See, I didn't really watch a lot of golf in the 90s, if I'm honest. This is one of the problems I've got. Of course, we don't have. Do we have Faldo? I don't know. Was that too late for him? Did he even win the US Open? I don't know.
Faldo is not correct, I'm afraid. Faldo is not correct. Okay. But that doesn't mean I sort of speculated for a moment. I'm going to give you a bit of time. We should have set a firm limit on this, shouldn't we? Because we've got 7 minutes until our official promised limit.
Yeah.
Don't know what happens if we go over an hour.
Looking through, let's think. Oh, Retief Goosen.
Very good. 7.
Ernie Els.
8.
Any Aussies win it?
Yeah.
Jason Day.
No,
he didn't win it, did he? Do I get to keep going even if I've named an incorrect one?
I don't think we've laid out the rules properly here, and we probably should have done.
We probably should have done. I think I may possibly have maxed out anyway. Ben, I'm going to give you a chance to steal in.
I've not been thinking about this. You know how you've been doing it. I've not been sat here thinking of names, which I should have done.
I don't. You're probably going to get them anyway, Ben.
Your Aussie's Jeff Ogilvy.
Oh, of course.
And I think I'm right in saying you didn't say Justin Rose. Is that correct?
I didn't say Justin Rose. Oh God.
I was waiting for Rosie. For Rosie.
It's weird how some just kind of completely slip your mind. You know, the really.
It is. I missed Francesco Molinari from the BMW PGA winners last week. So it's been gnawing away at me ever since. So you're in for a torrid week, I'm afraid. You're going to wake up.
You also missed Ryan Fox, Ben, which was a very recent one.
What was that? Sorry, I missed that.
You missed Ryan Fox as well, which is a very recent one.
Ryan Fox has not won the US Open, obviously.
No,
BMW PGA, sorry. Yeah, I did miss Ryan Fox. Very good. Now we've both disgraced ourselves. But bottom line, I suppose, is I've got 2 points. So
I mean, ultimately, you have got 2 points. I'm going to bring in the board, which my daughter Georgia designed.
I'm glad I sort of went lower because it was a difficult one, but also because it'd be boring if it's just me every week and you waiting to steal the 2 points. So,
although will it be boring every week if you win every week? I don't know.
Not going to happen. Not going to happen. We'll go again next week, but we do want suggestions. As Sam said, it's quite hard to keep them from ourselves, but you can find a way.
But please do send them in because they're fun, and that was a good one actually. I think that's a good one. I think that's kind of the sweet spot in the kind of between 5 and 15 level of what you're likely to get, because you don't want us rambling on for 15 minutes trying to stab at names.
No, exactly, and also it's an acknowledgement that despite one of us at least appearances, we are relatively young men, and that anyone who comes on with a category is like, winners of the Open between 1960 and 1980. I mean, obviously I get a few because but the point being, if we were alive, that helps. I am firmly modernist, so yes, more categories like that.
I agree. I love sort of 21st century. I've got to say, even when we get into the 90s, as you probably saw from what I just did, then I start getting a little bit hazy. So.
I'll be honest, I was twitchy. If you'd have said Rose, I don't know who I'd have gone after Ogilvy and Rose. Angel Cabrera, there you go. But anyway, that's not the point. It's showing off now.
He's just showboating now. He's showboating. It's a good time to wrap it up before I get completely embarrassed. So, thank you everyone for listening. As Ben mentioned at the beginning of the pod, please do leave ratings, reviews, anything that will help us get the word out there. I think we've been reasonably pleased with how things have gone so far with the first episode. But please do share it with people. Please do rate, and please do come again next week and listen to us next Monday.